Dr. Patrick Kumar-Boaje, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, says government is putting in place measures to halt a possible third outbreak of the coronavirus disease in the country. He said with some countries in Europe currently experiencing a third wave of the infectious disease, coupled with the rising cases in India and Brazil, it was imperative for government to be alert, especially at the airport, to avoid being taken by surprise. Dr. Kumar-Boaje, speaking during the minister's media update in Accra, said the country's COVID-19 numbers at the airport had reduced, averaging 90 per week. However, he said that did not mean the country was out of the woods. Giving an overview of the country's cases, Dr. Kumar-Boaje said Ghana had conducted over 1 million tests since the start of testing.
We have done more than 1 million tests as a country since we started testing January 2020. We have experienced 2 waves, and as you are aware, the second wave was bigger than the first wave. We've had significant decline in our cases since mid-February, and currently we have our active cases have dropped from 8,000 to less than 1,500. Actually, it's about 1,314 or so. We have so far received 966,850 vaccines, and we have vaccinated more than 800,000 people since we started vaccination on the 2nd of March this year. So as further summary, we have detected 91,709 cases. As I said, we've done over 1 million tests, with a cumulative positivity of 8.8%. We have discharged 89,000 plus. We have had 771 deaths, and as you are aware, in the last 3 months, we've had more deaths than we had in 9 months of the previous year. The new cases, as of 15th of April, is 46. That's about 3 days ago, we recorded 46 new cases across the country. Greater Accra still remains the epicenter because more than half of these 46 were detected in Accra. And currently, all 16 districts have ever reported a case, and 253 districts still have reported a case, which means that we still have about 7 or so districts that have never experienced a COVID case across the country.
Dr. Kumar-Boaje further disclosed that 46 new cases were recorded as of 15th April this year, with Greater Accra region recording more than half of them.
We still have significant threats, especially with the third waves in Europe, the rising cases in India, Brazil, among others. These are also poses a threat to our cases, so we need to work very hard to prevent them, and that is why the work at the airport remains very, very significant, especially with the advent of new variants, which we may not know how the Ghanaian population will handle that. So the positivity rate at the airport has significantly reduced, but there's a slight rise, and I think that's all because of that. One can say, today is the 18th, that any spike that happens after now, we cannot blame it on Easter, which means that the Easter system that were put in place have actually worked, because the 2 weeks have passed, and so we need to continue to protect ourselves, and that shows you how important that adhering to the discipline in all these festivities is very, very important to avert any spread of the disease.
On the vaccines, he said Ghana had received 966,850 vaccines, with more than 800,000 people vaccinated since vaccination started on March 2nd this year. Dr. Kumar-Boaje said its initial vaccination policy of having the second dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine administered within an 8-week window period has been extended to 12 weeks. This, according to the Ghana Health Service, is to allow more people to get ready for the second dose deployment and ease of deployment. He explained that although Ghana had opted for the 8-week window period as the earliest time for the second dose, it had become necessary to extend it by another 4 weeks.
We have an update as at 18, that's about this morning, total numbers. As at, say today, we have received a total of 966,850 vaccines. 600,000 from the COVAX facility, 50,000 from as a donation from the Indian government. We have 165,000 from MTN Africa, and then 149,000 as a second dose also from MTN Africa, bringing the total about 315,000 from the MTN group. We have also have about 16,000 Sputnik there, which we are yet to use, as we hope to get more, and then we can put them to use.
According to Dr. Kumar Buaje, government was in talks with the COVID-19 Vaccine Global Access Facility, COVAX, to have the second doses in the country by May. Dr. Kumar Buaje said data from the World Health Organization indicated that the best period for the booster dose was between 8 to 12 weeks.
Based on some of the WHO recommendations on how to deploy AstraZeneca, the recommendation is that it has to be the dosage of between 8 to 12 weeks interval doses. That is, as far as vaccination is concerned, what we have most important is the minimum time within which a second shot, a booster dose, can be given. If you do it before that minimum date, you will not get any benefit. But sometimes the longer you wait, it still doesn't matter that you can still have your second shot and get your booster dose build up. The WHO has done a lot of studies and has also shown that, number one, is that if you give it before 4 weeks or before 2 weeks, there's virtually no benefit. But between 8 and 12 weeks is the best time to give. Even then, you'd have lost some percentage of the antibodies. Is still effective enough to protect you.
According to Dr. Kumar Buaje, about 80 to 94% of the people who have taken the first dose are protected from severe diseases and even death. But that does not mean a second dose is not important.
According to the studies that have been done globally and around, it protects you about 76% protection for over about 90 days, which coincide with the 12 weeks we are talking about. Subsequently, they have not done the next stage. A lot of work is being done now, and I'm sure when it's concluded, we'll see how long does the first dose really protect you before you become vulnerable. Even in that, about 80 to 94% of the people who have received their first dose within that period are protected from severe disease and death. And so what it means that if more people have one dose, it's probably still save a lot more.
Dr. Kumar Buaje explained further that per Ghana's vaccination policy, the second dose should be administered sometime in May.
There are significant efforts being made, and we have some assurance from COVAX that by May we'll get vaccination. And if we get our vaccine in May, we'll be able to do our second doses and as a service, we are more concerned with having more people with the first dose. Because that's what can also cause the distance. But we've got enough, and there are also bilateral arrangements that are bringing in other COVAX vaccines, including Johnson & Johnson, which we are expecting probably in the third or fourth quarter of the year. And then a lot of work is going on to get vaccine Sputnik for everybody.
Ghana was the first country in the world to receive COVID-19 vaccines as part of the COVAX initiative to ensure equitable access for everyone. The COVID-19 vaccination began on March 2nd and was conducted in phases and in segments of the population.
Ghana received a total of 279 foreign direct investment (FDI) projects valued at $2.7 billion in 2020, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. The projects will go into areas such as manufacturing services, building and construction, agriculture, mining, petroleum and export trading, and expected to generate 27,110 jobs nationwide. According to the Ghana Investment Promotion Innovation Center (GIPC) that facilitated the investment drive, a total value of $2.65 billion. Of those projects were foreign investments, while $145 million were domestic. Information Minister Kojo Ponkuma announced this during the minister's media briefing in Accra on Sunday. The minister noted that last year's FDI saw about 140% increase in investment over 2019 because of sound monetary and fiscal policies and expansion of the country's economic space. He said 184 of the projects will go into services, 57 to manufacturing sector, 15 to export trading and 10 to general trading. Mr. Ponkuma further gave the breakdown of the investment per sector and the country of origin. He said, for instance, the manufacturing sector will receive $1.2 billion, $650 million for the services, $120 million will go into the mining sector, and $122 million into the petroleum sector. Some of the foreign countries that made various investments into the local economy include China, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, and South Africa. Mr. Ponkuma indicated that the GIPC had been tasked to ensure the equity and logistical components were realized. The projects are expected to be implemented in 8 regions, including the Greater Accra, Ashanti, Central, Volta, Oti, Western, Eastern, and Northern region. 231 of the projects will go to the Greater Accra, 31 to the Western region, 7 to the Ashanti, 3 to Volta, 3 to Eastern and Upper East and Central regions will have 1 each. Mr. Ponkuma further explained that the GIPC had been tasked to provide quarterly updates on the progress of work of those investment opportunities, adding that data based on the first quarter update on work done so far was ready and will be published very soon.
Now, every year, every country is working to deepen investments in the private sector in its economy. And usually when you measure what comes from abroad, they call it foreign direct investment, as you are aware. Last year, from January to December 2020, despite the pandemic, 279 FDI projects with a total estimated investment value of about $2.7 billion were recorded for the Republic of Ghana. The FDI component, the one coming from abroad, was about $2.65 billion, and then about $145 million from the local market. Now, the FDI value of 2.6 is about almost 140% increase over the figure recorded in the year 2019. And we believe it is because of the gradual improvements we continue to make in the economic space here in Ghana, despite the challenges that we have around us, and even in particular the challenges of the year 2020. If you look at the GIPC presentation that we flagged on the screen, and if we can just open it up a little bit, about 184 of those investments were in the area of services, 57 of them in manufacturing, 15 export trade, general trading was about 10, and the rest follow from there. In terms of money value, that'll be the third table. So please go to table 2B, the next one. In terms of money value, manufacturing had the largest amount, that's about 1.2 billion, and the services, even though it's the largest component, has about 650 million, mining about 420 million, petroleum 222 million, and the rest follow from there. If you look at the regional distribution, about 231 of those projects will be located in Accra or have been located in the Greater Accra region, 1 in the Central region, 31 in the Western region, 3 in the Eastern region, 7 in the Ashanti region, 3 more in the Volta region, and 1 in the Upper East region.
The United Nations Conference on Trade and Investment Global Investment Trends Monitor said global investment collapsed in 2020, falling by 42% to an established $859 billion from $1.5 trillion in 2019. The decline was concentrated in developed countries when FDI flows fell by 69% to an estimated $229 billion. Despite the grim economic outlook caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the overall FDI in developing countries appeared relatively resilient.
Monday marks the beginning of the end in regards to the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who is accused of killing George Floyd last year by kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes. The defense and prosecution have each rested their cases, and both sides are set to deliver their closing arguments on Monday. After 3 weeks of emotional testimony and expert opinions, coupled with 2 fatal police shootings since the trial began, pressure has mounted as the world watches the Twin Cities. Monday will provide both sides one last opportunity to be heard before the jury decides Chauvin's fate. Chauvin faces 3 charges: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Before the jurors left for the weekend, Judge Peter Cahill suggested they prepare for a lengthy deliberation. The prosecution has relied on eyewitness accounts, video footage of the arrest, as well as medical experts in their case against the former police officer. Chauvin's defense attorney, Eric Nelson, has worked to instill reasonable doubt in jurors' minds. He argued that a history of drug use and possible carbon monoxide poisoning from the squad car exhaust contributed to Floyd's death. Prosecutors, however, enlisted experts who stressed the police officer's excessive use of force. In his testimony, Dr. Andrew Baker, the Hennepin County medical examiner who ruled Floyd's death a homicide, said he did not believe the drugs in Floyd's system directly caused his death. Both sides will likely reiterate and emphasize their side of the case during the closing arguments, but the prosecution has a hard road ahead. Police are rarely convicted of murder following an on-duty shooting, let alone while detaining a suspect. A study conducted by Bowling Green State University found that between 2015 and 2019, a total of 104 non-federal sworn law enforcement officers were arrested for murder or manslaughter as a result of an on-duty shooting in which the officer fatally shot someone. Only 4 were convicted of murder. 18 were convicted of manslaughter, while others faced lesser charges, including official misconduct and federal criminal deprivation of civil rights. On Friday, thousands of protesters marched through Chicago's Logan Square neighborhood after the release of police body camera footage showing last month's fatal shooting of 13-year-old Adam Toledo as he raised his hands. Stakeholders in the broadcasting industry have agreed to set up a joint stakeholder group under the National Media Commission (NMC) to examine reports of unethical content and make recommendations. The committee will also invoke the powers of the National Communications Authority (NCA) to take punitive action against offending broadcasters. A communique issued by the Consultative Forum and presented by the Information Minister Kojo Oppong Nkrumah at the Information Minister's media briefing in Accra on Sunday said to achieve the recommendations reached at the meeting last Friday, stakeholders will sign a memorandum of cooperation within 14 days of the meeting to formalize arrangements for the action. The communique said the setting up of the Joint Stakeholder Committee was in accordance with Section 10 of the NMC Act 1993, Act 449, and members will be drawn from the NMC, NCA, the Ghana Journalists Association, the Bank of Ghana, the National Security Secretariat, the Ghana Independent Broadcasting Association, and the Office of the Attorney General.
The discussions focused specifically on 2 things. 1, regulatory collaboration to address unethical broadcast content, and 2, the draft broadcasting bill. Now let me deal with the first matter. To address the question of unethical broadcast content, stakeholders agreed to set up a joint stakeholder group under the National Media Commission to examine reports of unethical content and invoke the powers of the National Communication Authority to take punitive action against offending broadcasters. And here are the specifics. 1, stakeholders have agreed that within 14 days of this meeting, they will sign up to a memorandum of cooperation among themselves to formalize the roadmap for action. 2, key to the arrangements in this memorandum of cooperation is the setting up of a joint stakeholder group which will operate as a committee of the National Media Commission in accordance with Section 10 of the NMC Act 1993, Act 449. 3, the members or the membership of this committee are to include representatives of the National Media Commission, the National Communication Authority, the National Security Secretariat, the Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, the Ghana Journalists Association, and the Office of the Attorney General.
The work of the committee is to, among other things, monitor the broadcasting landscape to identify and examine complaints of unethical broadcast content. Kojo Opong Nkrumah said the committee would examine whether the broadcast content is offensive to national security, public order, public morality, and against the reputations, rights, and freedoms of other people. It will then provide an early warning system for flagging such unethical broadcast content and also recommend appropriate remedies to relevant regulators, including the issuance of warnings, suspension of frequency authorization by the NCA, and the withdrawal of frequency authorization.
Work of the committee is to, among other things, do the following. 1, monitor the broadcasting landscape to identify and examine complaints of unethical broadcast content. These include content that are offensive to national security interest, public order, public morality, and also against the reputations, rights, and freedoms of other persons. You find them listed, I think, under Article 164 of our Constitution. 2, they will provide an early warning system for flagging such unethical broadcast content. And 3, they will make recommendations, or this committee will make recommendations to the relevant regulators. And these recommendations include 1, recommendations for the issuance and publications of warnings where that is appropriate, recommendations for the suspension of frequency authorization by the National Communication Authority. So for media houses that are publishing this kind of content, once this committee starts work, if they find that your content is in breach and your attention is drawn and the necessary remedies are not occasioned as requested, they will make recommendations for the suspension of frequency authorization by the National Communications Authority. They will also make recommendations for the withdrawal of frequency authorization, where need be, by the National Communications Authority. So on the matter of unethical content on our broadcast landscape, this is what the Consultative Forum has agreed to do. And within 14 days, they will execute that memorandum of cooperation and start work accordingly. They will examine.
On the broadcasting bill discussions at the Consultative Forum, the Minister of Information disclosed that the stakeholders agreed on several policy propositions, while others required further address through memoranda from stakeholder groups. He said they agreed to submit formal written memos on the bill for immediate attention of the Ministry of Information to assist in formulating a final draft. They agreed to engage the judiciary on the balance between media gatekeeping and protection of the freedoms of the media and expression. The Ministry of Information pledged to organize annual fora in order to engage stakeholders in the broadcast industry to further strengthen and develop the media landscape.
Now, on the matter of the draft broadcasting bill, the meeting also examined key issues that are being considered in the development of a broadcasting law for Ghana. Now, while agreeing on several policy propositions, other policy propositions required further address through written memoranda from the stakeholder groups. So the stakeholders agreed to submit formal written memos on the bill for the immediate attention of the ministry in formulating a final draft. Stakeholders also further agreed to engage the judiciary on the balance between media gatekeeping and protecting the freedoms of media and expression. The ministry also undertook to secure the needed approvals and lay the bill before Parliament immediately upon the conclusion of these consultations. Stakeholders were pleased with the open and frank engagement and committed to work together to achieve results with urgency. And the Ministry of Information has also committed to hold this engagement annually to examine development in the industry and agree with stakeholders on measures to further develop the industry.
The consultative meeting was convened by the Ministry of Information in Accra last Friday to deliberate on broadcasting in Ghana. This follows the recent happenings in the media landscape, with some media outlets allowing the broadcasting of inappropriate content such as money doubling, rituals for money, fake news, and hate speech.
The Duke of Edinburgh has been laid to rest in an intimate funeral at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Queen Elizabeth II bid farewell to her late husband, Prince Philip, at a royal funeral restricted by coronavirus rules. The Duke of Edinburgh, who died aged 99 on April 9, was interred in the royal vault at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle after a 50-minute service attended by just 30 guests. The Queen, 94, seen for the first time since his death, cut a lone figure, sat in mourning black with a white-trimmed black face mask. Close family also maxed up and sat socially distanced in the historic 15th century Gothic chapel. Philip, described by royals as the grandfather of the nation, was Britain's longest-serving royal consort and was married to the Queen for 73 years. The last high-profile funeral of a senior royal was for the Queen's mother, who died in 2002, aged 101. The Duke's children walked behind his coffin in a funeral procession, followed by a national-minute silence. His coffin was carried a short distance to St. George's Chapel on a modified Land Rover, which the Duke himself helped to design. More than 730 members of the armed forces took part in the event, but there was a limit of 30 mourners inside St. George's Chapel under COVID rules. The coronavirus pandemic forced hasty revisions to the well-rehearsed plans for the Duke's death, codenamed Operation Fourth Bridge, stripping back public elements to prevent large crowds from gathering. Government guidelines limited the number of mourners, and the quarter performed hymns the Duke chose himself in a barren nave stripped of seating.